Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have some questions. Are cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum just a passing trend, or are they here to stay? And what do they mean for you and me? Let's get to the bottom line. In 2009, if someone told you to buy a digital currency that was worth a few pennies because it would be the wave of the future, you would have been right to laugh. But guess who's laughing now? These cryptocurrencies, led by the most famous of them all, Bitcoin, have made many people millionaires, and some even billionaires, going from a value of about 8 cents in 2010 to more than $45,000 now. So literally, if you bought just $2 worth back then, you held it for 10 years, maybe you just forgot about it, you'd be a millionaire today, quietly, with no way to tax you or even know who you are. Crypto started as a manifesto with lofty goals. First, to stay anonymous online. Second, to create a financial world without borders. And third, to avoid the traditional banking scene after the global crash of 2008. But that anarchist manifesto has boomed into big business. Today, the size of the crypto market is estimated at $2 trillion. And there are all sorts of currencies out there now, like Ethereum and Dogecoin, Cardano, you name it. So inevitably, that means that hackers are going to try to get into the action, invisible forces are going to try to manipulate values, and governments want to jump in. They want to regulate the currencies, break the anonymity, and tax folks when they make a profit. So how much is noise and how much is hype? And should we be sticking to cold, hard cash? Today, we're talking to an early evangelist and investor in crypto and its backbone, the blockchain. He is South African internet entrepreneur Vinny Lingham. Vinny is a shark on South Africa's version of Shark Tank, and he's the co-founder of Civic, an identity protection startup in California. Vinny, it's a real pleasure to have you on today. And let me just start out, because I want to have a thoughtful show on what the architecture and possibility of cryptocurrencies may mean for the average person out there. When you go and talk to an audience that may not be an investor, may not own Bitcoin, what are the things that you think are highest on the list of the benefits to society from this new world of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain?
Steve, thanks for having me on the show. I think let's start with the very basics around what is crypto, what is the blockchain, what is this industry about? And it really started when Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous inventor of Bitcoin, tried to create effectively a digital asset, something that could be transferred around the world. And you could, it was dissimilar to the way music files were transferred, over a decade ago, where you could take a music file, you could copy it 100 times, you could send it to all your friends, and that exists today with regular files. But Bitcoin was different. Bitcoin had a network of computers, so once you sent a Bitcoin to someone, you couldn't send it to somebody else as well. And so that was the unique innovation on Bitcoin and blockchain technology, was the ability to make these digital tokens or files, uncopyable. So what happens when you have that sort of technology? What can you use it for? Well, you could use it for things like deeds, titles for homes, NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, where you have digital pieces of art where only the original owner of the token actually owns the art. You can copy it a million times, but it doesn't have the signatures attached to it. So there's this entire ecosystem that's evolved around the basic premise of creating scarcity in a digital world.
Well, I think one of the other interesting things about, and I know there's a difference between blockchain and then the currency side of it, which we can get into later. But as part of the currency side, you've been out there predicting that Bitcoin, which is around $45,000 today, but who knows what it'll be tomorrow. I mean, it's gone through some wild rises and falls lately, but you predicted that by year end it could be upwards of about $100,000. So one of the things that perplexes me is that most currencies are considered to be stable, that you need them to be stable, and as opposed to these big rises and falls. Is it healthy for Bitcoin to surge to a level of $100,000 and be more of an investment rather than a currency?
So the word healthy is kind of it's an interesting word, right? Who are we to say what's healthy and what's not? I think overall, there's a strong grassroots movement on Bitcoin that will see it continue to be propelled upwards. One of the things which gets missed actually in mainstream media, in the Bitcoin world itself, is that you've got this huge audience of people who are constantly buying Bitcoin. So think of it as a kind of a meme community. But I always call Bitcoin the original meme coin. And if you're familiar with Dogecoin, that's a meme coin too. But Bitcoin was the original coin where you've got this, this society, this community of maybe it's tens of millions of people, maybe it's 100 million right now, that want to own Bitcoin and a certain number of Bitcoin, and they keep buying it, right? And these are wealthy individuals, poor individuals, whatever, across the spectrum. And services like Coinbase and a few others allow you to buy Bitcoin on a subscription basis for long-term savings. So people basically are acquiring Bitcoin every day, every week, every month on a regular schedule and just putting it into a long-term savings account. And that just means one thing. It means the price of Bitcoin has to go up because it's a demand-supply curve. And the people who are doing these, and I have got tons of friends who do this, they could put $1,000 or $10,000 a month away a Bitcoin. And because you're not printing any more Bitcoin than what's in the fixed issuance rate, it's a simple number. The number has to go up. Now, it may jump from 50 to 100,000, maybe come back down to 80, maybe down to 30 or 40. But as it does that every single month, people are pouring fiat into Bitcoin, and it's called dollar cost averaging. So they're buying it every week, day, month, regardless of the price, because they're averaging their cost base. And so that community is getting bigger and bigger of people who have subscription buying Bitcoin every single time period I'm selected. So this is the world we're dealing with right now. And unless these people start selling their Bitcoin, which isn't really happening based upon on-chain statistics we're seeing, the Bitcoin price is kind of going to hold up.
But if you've got critics like Nouriel Roubini, I'm sure you're familiar with Nouriel Roubini's comments. He says it's the mother of all Ponzi schemes, that it depends upon other people buying and holding on, and at some point there will be a collective realization, and this will crash, and many people will become poor. What is your response to someone like Nouriel Roubini who worries about the downsides?
So here's the thing. I like to, Nouriel and who's the other guy? Peter Schiff. There are a lot of naysayers in Bitcoin, and quite frankly, I'm a naysayer on some things as well. Like I think that there's some things which don't make sense. But I've always learned that you've got to watch what the market does, not what the market says, right? So if people think it's going to go up to 200,000 or whatever, look at the buying activity, look at the selling activity, and your personal opinion actually doesn't matter. The market will do what the market does. And so Nouriel and Peter, etc., they're too emotionally attached to the outcome either way. So Nouriel wants to be right, and so does Peter, and Peter has financial incentives and gold. But the market disagrees with them for now. Maybe it'll agree with them in the future. Who knows? The fundamental issue here is nobody knows. No one knows how this plays out. And yes, it doesn't make sense, but maybe there's a paradigm shift. Maybe the world changes in some significant way, which makes Bitcoin go up. A lot of these pundits I think they're just too. I think people are often too negative or too positive, and you've got to at least admit that this is an experiment that's played out over 12 years or 13 years, and it's continuing to make headway and continue to go up. And so until you see a trend reversal, until you see something which shows you otherwise, just follow the numbers. The numbers basically say this is going in an upward direction, and no one else's opinion can change that right now.
What are the trends in cryptocurrencies with regard to people knocking out the middlemen, the efficiencies that are created?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's talk about banking for a second, right? What is really banking? What is it? It's institutional, custodying of funds. So the bank says, I'll hold your money for you, and when you need to give it to someone, you can tell us, and we'll make a payment for you, or we'll invest it for you, etc. What blockchain and crypto has done is basically said, look, anyone can be their own bank. Anyone can hold their own cryptocurrencies, whether it's stable coins or Bitcoin. You don't need to have a bank. You don't need to, you can put on your own devices. So the idea that money can be, centralized in the banking system is kind of an ancient idea. The new idea is that everyone else is able to be their own bank. I think we're at the very early stages of seeing the way this plays out. In the same way that the internet, when it arrived, everyone was like, this is going to kill newspapers. It's going to kill travel agents. It's going to kill all these different industries. And, we still have some travel agents today. We still have newspapers. It's changed. They've shrunk, and the industry shrunk. There are fewer of them. But it didn't happen overnight. It took, a decade or two to happen. So kind of like I caution people with thinking that these things are going to happen overnight. What will happen overnight is, what I'm seeing is marketplaces will form where people can do much, much lower peer-to-peer transactions and with lower fees. And so that's a huge benefit for people right now.
So let's talk about the global bad guys and Bitcoin. You know, one of the other dimensions, if I were to organize an event in Washington, D.C. on this subject and convene people, you know who's going to show up? The FBI, the CIA, the Department of Defense. Can you talk us through for a moment what your concerns are about the security side of this equation and what needs to be in place that's not there today?
So just for the record, my company, Civic, provides KYC, which is Know Your Customer, AML, anti-money laundering technologies and services, and ID verification. So we're big into the space of revealing who's on the other side of a transaction. Now, what I can say is this: there's two sides to this coin. First of all, there's call it the first 6 to 8 million, maybe 10 million coins that are mined in the Bitcoin network, which is largely anonymous. We don't know where that money is. We don't know who owns it. We kind of know, obviously, on the blockchain which wallets own it, but we don't know who the identities of these people are. So, and we obviously know there was a lot of Silk Road activity back then. There was a lot of, drugs and other markets and illicit activity back then. But the good news is, on the back end, the next 10 million coins that were mined is kind of well known. These are miners that operate in China or wherever part of the world. They have KYC done. They sell exchanges. So the real question is, like, how much of the Bitcoin market cap is in the hands of people who are, bad actors, so to speak? And when they want to convert that into capital, into cash, or use it, well, do they have to go through exchanges, which have KYC, AML policies, or are they going to do just do peer-to-peer transactions with other bad guys? So that's the question. And then you have things like decentralized exchanges and whatnot, where there is no identity attached to it. So the governments are coming in and they're saying, look, we want to try and shine a light on who owns these coins at a very high level, and so we don't want to be having any terrorist financing activities happening, etc. My view on the government perspective is it's kind of like too late. They should have done a lot of this 3-4 years ago, and they kind of woke up now and realized there's a really big market cap for Bitcoin, so there's a lot of money sitting there, and now how do we deal with it? And they're really trying to sort of overcompensate for their lack of action, 3 or 4 years ago. And so that's the concern. It's like, guys, there's an industry that's burgeoning here, and you're trying to kill it because you guys were sleeping on the job, 3 or 4 years ago when you should be more active about this. And that's not any one particular government. That's just the global market, the global sort of regulators. And some regulators have been smart about it, some haven't. But these are it's so difficult to sort of enunciate this sort of issue or because it's so multidimensional. I mean, it could take me an hour to go through all the different facets of, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And so you can take the perspective that, okay, well, governments, they messed up and now they're going to come in really hard. Or you can say, look, guys, let's just find a way going forward that keeps the good actors, engaging with each other and keeps the bad actors on the sidelines. And they try to enter the marketplace. Well, it's kind of locked out for them and they got to figure out, and they're going to get caught or whatever the case is. So when it comes to things like decentralized exchanges, my company's working on an identity layer so that you can actually trade on DeFi exchanges, because the problem with DeFi exchanges is counterparty risk. I want to go, put in Bitcoin and buy Ethereum, and if I don't know who the other person on the trade is, I could be doing a trade with someone who's a really bad actor, and I'm giving him Bitcoin or whatever it is. And so I think the world needs to, if crypto wants to interface with the fiat world and with the fiat banking system, we kind of have to adopt similar regulatory standards so that there's parity between the two. But the crypto world gets the benefit of not having any centralization or not having any custodians for your funds. You can be your own bank, and the banking world will have to compete on that commercially. So if you even the playing field on the regulatory front, the crypto world is going to destroy the banking sector. But the concern is, if you over-regulate crypto to give the banking sector the unfair advantage of A, being the incumbent, and B, having lighter regulations, you basically are, you're seeing corruption in the system, because that means the regulators are favoring the banks and trying to protect them. And that's not fair, in my opinion.
Well, we're beginning to see, Vinny, whether you call it regulation, but you're beginning to see more people comment in the U.S. side about concerns about what's going on in the cryptocurrency world. There's also been interest in how you tax it. So as part of the infrastructure bill that is just passed, at least in the United States Senate, but we're waiting to see what happens in the U.S. House of Representatives, the payment scheme for that infrastructure in part depends upon, taxing brokers, which could mean miners under the current piece of legislation that has passed. And then in China, when we see the moves by the Chinese government, which seem to be very, very hostile, in my opinion, to the cryptocurrency world, do you have a worry that that regulation world is going to spread and choke out the opportunities for crypto?
So crypto is a big industry. I think that certain coins may come under attack. Bitcoin's one of them, for example. But doesn't mean that I think that the surface area for attacking crypto is just very, very, very large. So how do you attack every single coin in every country? It doesn't work. So the government's going to have to figure out a way to do this. Some of the regulations are just kind of crazy. And if governments enact these regulations, people will move from crypto-unfriendly countries to crypto-friendly countries. You cannot protect the banking system. You have to assume that the banking system is going to be it's going to die over time. So just basically level the playing field and let the banks fight it out with, like the telcos have been fighting the banks for years. They've lost largely. Crypto is now fighting the banking system. Crypto, I think, is going to win. And the banking system is not innocent. We all know that. Like the fines are ridiculous. The amount of fraud that happens in banking, even with all their KYC, etc. The people who work in banks are actually not, like I would say a lot of the KYC people in banks, they do what other banks do so that they don't get in trouble. They're more interested in saving their jobs than solving the problem. And so what you find is, like, for example, if I send a wire to some scammer in some foreign country, that money's gone, right? Like, you never get it back. There's no recourse to the bank and say, hey, you KYC these guys. The name on the account was this, but it wasn't really that. But sorry, that's it. So what's the point? What's the point of all these regulations, KYC, et cetera, when the banks aren't being held accountable for bad accounts or fraudulent accounts? And so, I just think regulators should be here to serve the people and say, you know what? We don't care whether you want to use banking or crypto or whatever else, or even using a telco account. It doesn't matter. You can use airtime to pay for stuff. You can use cryptocurrencies. You can use fiat. We're here to make sure that there's no terrorist financing, there's no illicit activities, there's no money laundering. Like, that's what we're here for. And the rules we set for banking are the same rules for everyone else. And whether you want to use one of these other services, it's up to you. That's like me in my idealistic sort of balanced view. The reality is that the banks are, and the politicians in many countries are in bed together. And so the banks will fight that notion off. And the banking system wants heavier regulations for crypto because they realize that crypto is a massive threat to banking.
Well, we've seen now, Vinny, companies like Walmart, Visa, a country like the government of El Salvador now moving to be quite crypto-friendly, crypto transactions, credit cards based on crypto and crypto savings, governments that have now established this as a national currency. So let me ask you, for a famous Vinny prediction, when you think a year from now, are we going to see more governments, more large companies? Do you see the trends, continuing that we're seeing today, or do you see that this is, largely still a very tentative process?
No, I think the cat's out of the bag. I think every major company so look, let's go to Visa, because you brought up Visa. Visa has recognized that their entire system is built on the banking system and on banks, and they've recognized that the banks are basically in trouble, and it's a train wreck in slow motion. The banking system doesn't realize how much trouble they're actually in. Visa is a really smart, Silicon Valley-based, company, really, and they know that this is going to be the end of the banking system. And if the banking system collapses, Visa still wants to function. So they basically, future-proofing their business by saying, and they're doing it very diplomatically. And I mean, I don't work for Visa, so I'll be less diplomatic. They're basically saying, you guys keep thinking crypto is not going to be a thing. We're going to make sure that we don't really care whether crypto, USDC, or banking fiat wins. We're still going to be the transaction process with our network. And quite frankly, Visa is doing a really good job in this sector right now, and the banks are sleeping on the job because the banks are watching Visa do this, and they're just kind of going, whatever. And when the world changes and they realize they've lost their edge, Visa will still be there, but processing transactions for crypto. Same for PayPal, same for Square, same for all the next generation products out there. The banking system is so far behind right now, I don't believe they can catch up. I don't believe they have the talent or the people. And the reason for that is banking, I talk to banking execs all the time. They come to me, they ask me questions. They go, what do you think? And I'll be like, well, who's the smartest crypto person in your company? Well, it's Johnny over there. How long has he been in crypto for? 2 years. And what is his salary? $200,000, $300,000 a year. Why do you think he gets paid $25,000 a month? Because he wasn't in early enough to make millions of dollars in crypto.
Right.
So now he's working for you. Do you think he's one of the smart guys out there? Or do you
Right.
think he's one of the guys who just didn't make the cut in crypto?
Right.
And that's the problem.
We're right at near the end, Vinny, but I got to get a quick question in here. Elon Musk has said because of all the mining and the use of energy in Bitcoin that's a dirty currency, but Dogecoin is a clean currency. What is your response to Elon Musk?
So Elon is right to some extent. Okay. The view on my view on energy is this: like Bitcoin will help accelerate clean energy for the world if it gets used at scale. And the reason is because you just
Right.
can't afford to fossil fuels and whatever else at scale. And so there is a large amount of clean energy going to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has catalyzed some of that innovation around clean energy.
Right.
Elon is right about a couple of things, and this goes back to the sort of scaling wars in 2017. The number of transactions per block in Bitcoin makes Bitcoin a very inefficient blockchain for transactions because you've got a fixed number. If the block size of Bitcoin was 8 times the size, you could fit 8 times as many transactions for the same amount of electricity usage, right? So this is the problem of Bitcoin. And when you look at Dogecoin, well, the Dogecoin community can experiment more and try and expand block sizes,
Right.
time, all those things. There's some centralization concerns there, but other than that, it's really it's a mathematical function here, right? More transactions per block equals less cost of electricity per transaction. And if Bitcoin is constrained to 7 transactions per second and 1 megabyte blocks or 2 megabyte blocks per second, it's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
it is what it is. It is what it is.
Got it. I'm going to squeeze in one last question. You are a shark on the South African version of Shark Tank. So separate from the crypto question, when you see these entrepreneurs out there, young and old people coming with a crazy idea, what do you think stands out? What are you looking for?
I always look for the people because I think it's the people that matter. Ideas come and go, they change, they evolve. But if you find good, talented people, smart, hardworking, willing to make sacrifices, you just got to give them as much money as you can and invest in them all day. And if they fail, that's fine. I look at my relationship with entrepreneurs as being, hey, I want to back you in this company and the next and the next and the next until you get a big hit. That's kind of my perspective on it. And until you prove me otherwise, that you're a high quality individual, I'll just keep giving you money as an investor.
Well, Vinny Lingham, serial entrepreneur, former board member of the Bitcoin Foundation, and current CEO of Civic in California, and star of Dragon's Den and Shark Tank in South Africa. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Steve.
So what's the bottom line? Cryptocurrencies have forced us to think about this big question: what is money? Businessman Elon Musk tweeted a few months ago that money is just something that, quote, allows us to avoid the inconvenience of barter. That means it allows us to have a way to trade apples for Teslas. And by that definition, anybody can really invest in anybody without the middleman, by which I mean the government. As millions of people start to trust and use these cryptocurrencies, they're becoming more real. The reasons that governments don't like them is that they want to control the flow of money, and they don't like when people can hide from them. And they especially don't like it when folks are making money without paying taxes. That's partially why you have some crackdowns on crypto worldwide. But there's no denying that big crypto is here and has been for a while. The struggle between governments and those who want to push the envelope of what's possible on the internet is really just beginning. Good luck to those who want to stop them. And that's the bottom line.